He owns and operates the Pack a Day podcast that airs 365 days a year with over 12 million views on YouTube. A new adventure begins. It's time for the Pack a Day radio show with Andy Herman on 1250 AM and 1057 FM The Fan, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook and on the free Odyssey app.
Or I wasn't that, and then I became the returner. And try to say I was just the returner. So played nickel, did that at a high level, and then playing corner now at a high level. So I just never let anybody ever put me in a box in my career. And that really helped me because I know confidently in myself and what I can do. And I can do it with the best of them.
Good morning, friends. Happy Thursday. Welcome into the Pack a Day radio show. My name is Andy Herman. That was one Keyshawn Nixon, courtesy of Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, talking about his journey and that he never, don't take him for granted. He's not going to be boxed in, and he's always going to be there, part of the conversation. And I certainly do not bet against Keyshawn Nixon. We're going to talk a little bit about that and talk about my 53-man roster prediction coming up, which he is very much a part of, obviously. We are live from the 1250 AM and 1057 FM The Fan studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. We've got Wendell Fajeda, A to Z Sports, coming up, covering the Green Bay Packers. He does a tremendous job. He'll join us at 8:20 a.m. this morning. Would always love for you to join the show as well. As you heard, you can join us on YouTube, and you can comment right out there as well. Plus, Nicolay Law Fan Talk and Text Line 414-677-1250. Again, 414-677-1250. Text us, call us, or again, get your messages and chats in on YouTube, and we will absolutely get responses to those throughout the course of today's show. Tommy, interesting day yesterday. Nothing Packers related. As quiet of a day as you can possibly have mid-training camp. And unfortunately, the Brewers did not help us out with something positive to talk about yesterday with a win. It was another losing performance. Miz a little bit shaky, but no panic on my end. Still lots to be positive about with our Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, does the quiet in Packers season, is that good news as well, Andy? I mean, it's probably better to be quiet right now than to be loud right now, I think, no?
Unless Loud is trading for Micah Parsons or Trey Hendrickson,
yeah.
that Loud would be a different sort of loud. But yes, I think in general, no news for the most part this time of year is pretty good news. So yeah, no worries or concerns there. And of course, today things ramp up pretty aggressively as we get to joint practices. Tommy, the last day of training camp is officially today.
Wow.
That seems insane. And there will be practices next week that are training camp-ish that the media is open to and we'll still be able to report on and things like that. But there's only a couple of those left as well. And today is the last practice that is open to the to the public until next offseason. That feels absolutely like, I know that this time of year, the time flies with everything, and you go again from mini camps and OTAs to training camp to, family night, preseason, and all of a sudden it's week one. But this training camp absolutely flew by, and I cannot believe that today's the last day of camp already.
Yeah, clap it up. We made it. We made it to football season.
We did it,
guys.
everyone.
We made it. Yeah, it was a long. It went really fast, actually. I think it felt like it was the Super Bowl, and then now training camp and the regular season. I mean, just a couple of weeks away now.
Yeah, I was just looking. We have football on September 4th. So 2 weeks from today. Exactly. 2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
Exactly. That first game, Cowboys at Eagles in Philadelphia to kick off the season. And then the very following night, Chiefs Chargers in Brazil or in Sao Paulo. So that should be a great game as well. Yeah, but we've basically made it. 2 weeks left. And then next week is going to be very epic with cut downs. And really, we have, let's see here today. Do we have any preseason today? We do have preseason today. So we've got Steelers, Panthers tonight, and then Patriots, Giants tonight. Some of these teams that have preseason games Thursday start making cuts already on Friday. And then the teams that play Friday, some will make them Saturday and so on and so forth. The final deadline for everything is Tuesday, but we will be very aggressive with all the cut downs and everything that are going to be happening over the course of the next 4 or 5 days or so. And that's going to come very fast as well. And it's going to just be very interesting to see how Green Bay ultimately puts together this 53-man roster, which we're going to try to do here in just a moment. All right, let's do it. Let's do it, Tommy. First of all, is you said the other day, Julian Hicks, kind of your guy that you have kind of as a sleeper 53. Any bold, spicy 53 takes, somebody who is everyone's expecting to make it that you think might get cut, or again, a player like Julian Hicks that you're just like, that dude's making the team?
Can I don't know if I necessarily have a hot/spicy take on a specific player, but I also now am leaning that it might be 4 running backs on the 53 man, just because Now we are waiting to see what happens with Marshawn Lloyd. And I don't think that I don't think that Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson did anything to not secure a spot on this team as well. So I would guess 4 running backs is my spiciest take too.
Okay. So let's do this position by position. Let's break it down where I think things stand, and then some of the kind of interesting discussion points, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay.
Quarterback, one of the more relatively simple ones. Only 2 on the active roster, Jordan Love and Malik Willis. Certainly will not keep either Sean Clifford or El Gersma on the active. The remaining battle is, do they keep El Gersma on the practice squad, Clifford on the practice squad, both of them on the practice squad, or do they find a quarterback elsewhere that comes off of waivers that they would rather have on the practice squad? So I think that's where things become interesting. But from a 53-man standpoint, Love and Willis, no questions, no further comments, Your Honor. All right, running backs. This is where I think it gets interesting with the Marshawn Lloyd situation. So just to remind everybody, previous years, in order to place somebody on IR and have them return during the season, you had to have them make the active roster first on cut down day and then be able to activate them. Now there are up to 2 players that you can designate to return from injured reserve on cut down day. I'm going to put Marshawn Lloyd in that category. I think they designate Marshawn Lloyd as a IR designated to return and make him out for those first 4 weeks. Even if he's ready to go week 1 or week 2, I think they give him just a little bit more time just to make sure that he is totally good, that this is not something, again, that lingers throughout the course of the season. So that's my expectation. It gets them kind of that extra roster spot anyway. So Marshawn Lloyd designated to return on the injured reserve list. That leaves you with 3 running backs, Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson, and Chris Brooks. So eventually you call back up Marshawn Lloyd, and then other injuries will probably precipitate how he gets on the active roster. But I do think if Lloyd is healthy, I'm with you. I think they would have 4 running backs on this roster as well. But for now, going with Lloyd on the IR designated to return. And that's, by the way, just one of the really, really difficult aspects of trying to put a 53-man roster together right now. Zane Anderson, we have no idea when he's going to return. Marshawn Lloyd, we have no idea when he's going to return. Even like some players like Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed, we're not totally clear if they're going to be ready for week 1, which could precipitate another receiver being, maybe needed on the active roster. There's a ton of moving pieces and variables with the injuries on this team right now. Jacob Monk's got a hamstring injury. He might be somebody that you have to IR designate to return. So there are a lot of pieces that you have to maneuver and try to figure out who's actually going to get what designation. Colin Oliver is on the physically unable to perform list. There was some talk the other week that he might be ready to come off. If he comes off prior to the start of cut down day, then you cannot put him back on it. Then you basically have to keep him on the active roster, release him, or put him on an injured reserve list. That complicates things. So very, very convoluted process here, but going with 3 running backs. Let's go to wide receiver. This again gets complicated because Jaden Reed, Savion Williams, Dontavian Wicks, all dealing with injuries at the moment. We have 5 that are obvious if they're all healthy. Dobbs, Golden, Reed, Williams, and Wicks all make the team pretty easily. I'm going to go with Malik Heath here as number 6. McCole Hardman in that conversation, maybe a Julian Hicks in the conversation as well. I think what Heath does as a blocker on the outside and just experience in the offense in year 3, I'm going to go with him for now. I think if everyone's healthy, I think if Dobbs, Golden, Reed, Williams, and Wicks are all completely healthy and good to go, I think they could get away with 5 here because I think you feel confident you can get a Malik Heath or a Julian Hicks or a McCole Hardman or maybe 2 of the 3, maybe even 3 of the 3 back on the practice squad. And if that's the case, you can just call some players up and remember that Christian Watson is likely going to be ready to go for their 5th game of the season, or at least they're around, and he's going to be your 6th receiver eventually anyway. So I think if everyone's healthy, Malik Heath might be off of this, but with the injuries right now to Reed, Williams, and Wicks, my guess is they probably want just a little bit more insurance there. So I'm going with Malik Heath as number 6. Tight end. All right, I'm gonna give a shout out to my guy Justice Mosqueda. Justice Mosqueda tracks special team snaps like nobody else has a passion for in anything else in life. It is unbelievable, and I love him for it because it does really help to decide some of these 53-man roster projections. He has Ben Sims making it on his because Ben Sims has recently been given a lot more special teams duties, which usually is, by the way, a tell. I do not have Ben Sims on my active right now. I have 3. So Justice has 4, Kraft, Musgrave, Fitzpatrick, and Sims. I just have the 3, Kraft, Musgrave, and Fitzpatrick. But I'll just note here, Ben Sims is the one to really keep an eye on here because he has got some increased looks on special teams, and it would not shock me if they kept that fourth tight end, even though I think 3 is probably enough, and I think Fitzpatrick is that cutoff. So I'm going with 3, but keep an eye on Ben Sims here as well.
Do you think you can plus minus wide receiver, tight end? Like we'll keep 5 wide receivers and 4 tight ends versus 6 wide receivers and 3 tight ends, Andy?
Again, if the wide receivers are healthy enough, yes. Like, again, if Wicks, Williams, Reed, Golden, and Dobbs are all healthy, and you said it's Sims on the roster instead of Malik Heath, I think that makes a lot of sense because Sims is going to give you a lot more help on special teams than what Malik Heath is going to. So that is well within the realm of possibility. Again, if they have the healthy wide receivers to kind of get through that game. Like if Malik Heath is going to be inactive for those first couple of games anyway as the 6th wide receiver, then there's no need to keep him on it because, again, Watson's going to be back sooner rather than later. So that is absolutely one that you could swap out if it does come to fruition. Offensive line is brutal right now because you have Jacob Monk that's dealing with the injuries. And then, quite frankly, there just isn't any number 9 offensive lineman worth keeping. Kadeem Telford has not played well. Donovan Jennings has not played well. The undrafted free agents have not made a name for themselves. So this could easily be a situation where we get a waiver claim or maybe even a player like a 7th round pick trade for an offensive lineman somewhere. I would not be shocked if there is a new offensive lineman that ends up on this team that is not on the roster right now. But for the moment, I'm going Rasheed Walker, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan. I'm going to put Jacob Monk on there for now. Hopefully that injury is nothing major and that he can be back soon. Anthony Belton. And for the moment, I have Kadeem Telford in that spot. It would have seemed that it was between Jennings and Telford. If Travis Glover was healthy, this was going to probably easily be Travis Glover. Unfortunately, he's done for the year. So I'm going to the bigger guy, which they seem to be migrating towards a little bit. This is Telford's 3rd season. He has not looked great in camp, but I'll go Telford by default. But this is one to keep an eye on where a waiver claim or a different type of player or different, trade or something like that could be in play here. So just a recap on offense so far: Love and Willis at quarterback, Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson, and Chris Brooks at running back, Romeo Dobbs, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Savion Williams, Dontavian Wicks, and Malik Heath at wide receiver, Kraft, Musgrave, Fitzpatrick at tight end, and Rasheed Walker, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, Jacob Monk, Anthony Belton, and Kadeem Telford on the offensive line. We'll get to our defense in just a moment. Reminder, you're listening to the Pack-A-Day radio show live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan Studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Appreciate you guys being with us here this morning, whether you're here on YouTube or with us through the radio waves. Let's get to defense, defensive ends. So again, very difficult because of the Colin Oliver and Barron Sorrell situations. And we just heard that Barron Sorrell, MCL, may be back around the start of the season, or at least has that potential. I'm still going to go Barron Sorrell as a IR designated to return as well. I think they'll be careful with him. I'm going to say that Colin Oliver does get activated sometime in the next week and a half, and therefore does not start the season on the physically unable to perform list, although we are running out of time. That probably needs to happen pretty much today or tomorrow. So maybe he ends up just on the PUP list, and maybe it's Sorrell that actually makes it back in time. But I'm saying Rashawn Gary, LVN, Brenton Cox, Kingsley Enagbare, and Aaron Mosby, and then expect either Oliver or Sorrell, one of those two, to probably take that other spot. Just depends which one's healthier and if Oliver gets activated in time. If he does not, he will end up on the PUP list. Maybe Sorrell stays on the active 53 at that point. Defensive tackle, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, Warren Brinson, and I do have Nasir Stackhouse. This is, again, one where Justice says there's not going to be any chance where they keep a 6th defensive tackle. I think Stackhouse has shown just enough to stick around, but he has had some rough reps in the preseason game. I do think he's a little bit more rough around the edges. I don't think he gets claimed by anyone, so he probably ends up back on the practice squad. But for now, I'm going 6 defensive tackles: Clark, Wyatt, Brooks, Wooden, Brinson, and Stackhouse. And I think Stackhouse is the interesting one there. I think Brinson, Wooden, Brooks, Wyatt, and Clark are all locks at the moment. Linebacker. This is where the final spot is very much up to probably this last preseason game. Quay, Cooper, McDuffie, and Hopper are all locks to make the team. And then that number 5 linebacker spot probably comes down to Isaiah Simmons or Christian Welch. You also could have a situation where if maybe Nasir Stackhouse does not make this team, or maybe Colin Oliver starts on the PUP list as well, that maybe they keep Isaiah Simmons and Christian Welch at this spot. But Simmons and Welch very much competing for potentially a final roster spot. And it really just comes down to special teams and what they give you as a backup linebacker. I think Welch is actually the better special teams player. Simmons is a very intriguing special teams player, though. Simmons has been active on defense far more than Welch. I don't think they would have any plans of actually getting Welch on the field on defense. Simmons, they might, but he has been brutal, and I mean brutal on defense in the first two preseason games. So that one is a very interesting conversation. What's your vote there, Tommy?
Yeah, so I have some influence from the kicker because he was teammates with Isaiah Simmons in New York for, a week and a half or whatever it is. But apparently in that time, Mason was with the New York Giants and Isaiah Simmons was there. He was a massive focal point for the special teams for New York. And so if truly you're looking at who can be a bigger impact on the special team side, with the experience of that role for Isaiah Simmons, I think he has the edge on it. I don't think it's because he can play the linebacker position better. I really don't. Because I do believe that, Tyron Hopper has taken a much bigger jump this year than maybe some anticipated, and he will probably be that fourth linebacker for Green Bay. But I think if we're looking at special teams wise, I think I would give the nod to Isaiah Simmons.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I did not hear that from Mason, and I could easily see that being the case. In fact, if I were to change something right now, I would probably say Nasir Stackhouse not on the team, and I think Welch and Simmons make the team for their special teams value at the moment. So I think you actually could see 6 linebackers in this scenario. Let's go to corner. Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine as your starters. You've got Bo Melton, who I think is making this team, which as a corner, which is pretty spectacular to say going into this. And then I have Micah Robinson as number 5 and no other corner at the moment. I could easily see them keeping 6. If they do, I mean, it is up for grabs. Kalen King, Corey Ballantyne, Kamal Haddon. I think all 3 of those players very much fighting for that number 6 spot. And by no means is Micah Robinson locked into that number 5 spot either. That's another spot. If you want to watch something, whether you're at joint practices today with Seattle, or you're just like, hey, what should I actually watch in the preseason game? Watch Welch and Simmons on special teams specifically, and watch Micah Robinson, Kalen King, Kamal Haddon, and Corey Ballantyne. Those are the ones that are really going to be fighting for a couple of those final cornerback roster spots. I think they keep the 7th rounder. I still think Bo Melton makes the team, and then I think they only go with 5, but it easily could be the case where they keep one more there. But definitely one of those positions that nobody stood out to an extent where you're like, yep, just easily lock them into the roster. Safety, Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, Kitano Ladapo, all locks. And then Zane Anderson, it just comes down to, is he healthy enough? Do they need to put him on an IR designated to return, or is he actually on the roster? For now, I'm putting him on the roster. Hopefully he's back in time, but he may be another one of those players that they need to designate. Remember, they can only designate 2. However, anyone else they would need to keep on the active roster and then put on IR and maybe claim somebody after the fact. Specialist, Matthew Orzik, Brandon McManus, Daniel Whalen. Those would be the 3. And then the special team, the practice squad that I built, Tommy, I got Taylor Elgersma, Israel Abanaconda, Amar Johnson, Cornelius Johnson, your guy Julius Hicks. I have Ben Sims, Donovan Jennings, Tyler Cooper, Lasita Smith, Christian Welch, Jamon Johnson, Kalen King, Corey Ballantyne, Kamal Haddon, Jonathan Baldwin. And then I had initially Keith Randolph before he got hurt. So I'm going to go with a different defensive tackle here. I think the only one left is their, I can't think of his name at the moment. James Esther. James Esther is probably the only one. So I'll go with James Esther as the other one. Actually, maybe I'll go with Deslin Alexander there. Actually, I'm going to go Deslin Alexander. So he'd be my other pick for practice squad. International Pathway Program player, Mark McNamee for now. Alex Hale, I could see return at some point. McNamee has not been very good. And if Hale returns from that eye injury, I could see them swapping them back out. And then remember Christian Watson, John Williams, both on the physically unable to perform list to start the season as well. What are your major gripes, disagreements, frustrations?
I just don't think Hicks makes it to the practice. I think someone picks him up. I really do. I think the guy is really good as a depth piece for the wide receiver room. I think it's interesting that who are your corners again, Andy? You said you had 5 corners, right?
Nixon, Hobbs, Valentine, Melton, and Micah Robinson.
Nixon, Hobbs, Valentine, Micah Robinson, and Bo Melton.
Yep.
I don't know what Kalen King has to do more too. I mean, the guy, they've given him so many chances at this point for a 7th round pick, where it seems like you got to make a decision on if you want to keep that 7th round pick or not too, or give up on it. I think he's also another pretty good bet in my mind to make the team as well.
If they do keep 6, he's very much in that conversation. I mean, he could be the 5th guy. That would not stun me either. He's easily in that conversation. Again, that's where I think this preseason game for those corners. If you told me Corey Ballantyne as a core special team player made it, I would totally believe that. Kalen King, 7th round pick. Micah Robinson, 7th round pick. Kamal Haddon, they really liked. He had a really brutal preseason game this past week, so he needs to bounce back in a pretty significant way. But I do think that those corner spots are totally up for grabs right now, probably more so than maybe anything else on this roster. That number 6 wide receiver spot, Malik Heath, McCole Hardman, Julian Hicks. I think those 3 are fighting for maybe that spot. If there is a 6th wide receiver spot, 9th offensive lineman, Kadeem Telford, Donovan Jennings, any of the, Lacita Smith, Trey Hill. If you've got offensive linemen next to your name, you've got a chance to make this team right now as the 9th guy. Like, go out and earn it in that final game. And then Nasir Stackhouse, if he wants to make this team, I think he has to have a final push and really show that, like, whether it's for Green Bay or another team, if he wants to make a 53 somewhere else, I think this is going to be a big game for him as well. And then, like we talked about, Isaiah Simmons, Christian Welch, those are the players to keep an eye on at joint practice, as well as in the final preseason game this Saturday coming up against the Seattle Seahawks at Lambeau Field. As always, Football Talk on the Fan is presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much these days, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game every Sunday on CBS and Paramount Plus all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. We are 68 and partly cloudy in Milwaukee, high of 73, low of 61 today. We'll be right back with Wendell Fajeda. This is the Pack-A-Day Radio Show, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Welcome back to the Pack a Day Radio Show live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan Studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Reminder, the Mason Crosby Show with Mitch Thunder Nellis, that does not include Mason Crosby or Mitch Thunder Nellis, is coming up from 9 to 11 today. We've got Tommy and Sparky taking over the Mason Crosby Show today, so don't miss that from 9 to 11. Right now, though, joining us on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law, is the one and only Wendell Fajeda, which, by the way, is somebody from Sobieski, Wisconsin. I am not trained to pronounce that last name correctly, so my apologies in advance, Wendell. You can find him on social media at Wendell FP. He is, of course, covering the Packers over on A to Z Sports as good as anyone in the business does it. Wendell, it's great to be chatting with you. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm great, and your Portuguese pronunciation is much better than my English one, so we're all good.
I'm not sure about that. I think the lie detector is going off aggressively, but I'll take the kind words nonetheless. Wendell, again, appreciate you being here. We've got a lot to get into. I just kind of went through my 53-man roster prediction for this team. I know you've kind of gone through this exercise as well. What to you are some of the ones that, as you get to the final 53 and maybe some of those last spots, that you are just struggling with? As I talked about, there's a lot of injuries that are clouding some things right now, but just from a pure talent player perspective and just kind of some of the roster logistics of everything, what are some of those spots that really stand out to you?
Yeah, there are so many things to consider because there are special teams. Gutekunst has always been super smart to also avoid players getting booked from for other teams in terms of waiver claims. So those things we have to take into consideration. But I think my positions of attention here are probably wide receiver 6. I think I'm curious to see if they will keep Miko Hardman or Malik Heath, or maybe they'll just keep 5. I think I have a serious question if they will keep 5 of ball linebackers, because Isaiah Simmons is a guy that have been massively struggled on defense. He has a special teams value, but that's limited too. And I think Christian Welch is an example of a guy that I think Welch is better than Simmons. But at the same time, I think the Packers would be able to keep him on the practice squad if they want to. So that has to be in consideration too. And I think that my main concern for the Packers is cornerback depth. And I think that the fight there is pretty intriguing between Bo Melton. I think Bo Melton will make the roster, but we have other guys like Micah Robinson, Kalen King, Kamal Haddon, Corey Ballantyne. All those guys are fighting for spots. And I think this final joint practice with the Seahawks and the preseason game will be super important to determine those roles.
I think so too. And you bring up a great point here. And actually, Michael on YouTube asked the question, do you think there's a strategy in order of cuts to get players through waivers? And I do think it is worth talking about that there is very much a strategy. Like that initial cut down is not always just about how do we keep the best 53-man players. The strategy involved is how do we keep our best 70 players, including the international pathway player, and make it so that players do not get claimed. You might have a situation where one player is actually better than the other, but you know that they're not going to get claimed, or you have a very good feel that they're not going to get claimed and that you can get them back on the practice squad. But the other player, maybe a younger player, more talented player, even though maybe not ready yet, is more likely to get claimed. So maybe you keep them on the 53, even though they aren't better than the other player. So there are absolutely some of those decisions that go into place where you're just trying to keep everyone and sort of play the game of how do we not get our players poached by other teams?
Yeah, we've had recent examples of the Packers doing that. For example, I think 2 years ago, the Packers cut Patrick Taylor, the running back, and he was being elevated from the practice squad every game because he wasn't going to get claimed. But at the same time, he was readier to play. So he was on the practice squad, but at the same time, being elevated every week. So I think those are the considerations. Generally, I think because of that, that's why the Packers will keep a guy like, for example, Nazir Stackhouse on the 53, because I would think that he would have a good chance of being claimed elsewhere. And he's a pretty good developmental player. He offers something the Packers basically don't have elsewhere on the roster, that run stopping ability, since TJ Slayton left out in free agency. So I think that's the type of player that you have to keep to protect. And I think Brian Gutekunst has done a really good job with that.
My favorite example is during COVID time when they released Chris Barnes. And nobody knew, like Chris Barnes was a undrafted free agent linebacker. It was during the COVID season, so nobody was allowed in the building. Nobody from the beat, there probably wasn't a tweet. If there was, maybe I had one of like Chris Barnes made a play once or something. I don't think anyone said anything about Chris Barnes through the entirety of training camp. And then at cutdown time, they release Chris Barnes. They waive him, subject him to any other team. They bring him back during the course of the week, and he was their starting linebacker week 1 that year. Like, he started the very first game. They literally risked cutting their starting linebacker because they thought that there was no way he was going to get claimed, and they were right. That's a bold gambit to play, but Brian Gutekunst is willing to play those if he thinks he can get away with it. In that case, he did, and he could easily do some of those things again this year. We're being joined by Wendell Fajeda. You can find him on social media at WendellFP, and of course on A to Z Sports as well. Besides those 53-man, kind of projections and cut downs, there's also going to be some other very big decisions. Backup quarter, I should say number 3 quarterback, as well as left tackle are 2 of those. Let's start with left tackle. You've got Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan. How do you see this playing out as we get closer and closer to Detroit in week 1?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we have to see is, will Aaron Banks be healthy for week 1? Because if he's not, then I think Morgan will have to slide to left guard, and Walker would have to play left tackle. Ideally for the Packers, because Walker is entering the final year of his deal, I think they prefer Morgan to be the starter in a perfect world. But I think they understand that Walker's probably more ready to play right now because of his experience. Gutekunst said that before training camp, that Morgan would have to be better, effectively better, to take over. So I think that's the consideration there. The thing for Walker that it's so hard, I was writing a piece the other day about his market. Was talking to Joshua Kippo, who's a cap expert, and he's projecting Walker's contract to be something around at least 14 million a year, maybe 16, maybe 18 million a year. And that's a lot of money for a left tackle, especially if you invested so much like the Packers did in the offensive line with guys like Morgan and Belton. So I think ideally the Packers would already have the answer at left tackle with Morgan, and then see the right guard position with Sean Ryan later, if Belton will be able to slide in there or not. But I think in the ideal world, it's better for the Packers, short and long term, if Jordan Morgan can play and can be ready and can start, because if you can have that answer right now, it's better for the Packers. And I think based on what we've seen from Morgan this preseason, he's pretty much capable of that. I think he has great movement skills. His technique is super refined. I think more than Walker, even though Walker is probably a little more powerful than Morgan. So I think for the future of the Packers, I would like for the Packers to start Jordan Morgan this year already.
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance that happens. I do wonder if they maybe go a platoon or a rotation at that position as well, just to keep Rasheed fresh. And also, like, you're kind of doing Rasheed dirty a little bit. Like you just mentioned that contract that he's going to be eligible for. If he doesn't play, it's going to be really difficult for him to kind of get that on the open market. And I don't think he's going to be too happy about that. I don't think you want to get rid of him and trade him away because you have no depth if you do anything like that. So, I do wonder if they maybe have some sort of rotation there where both guys get to play. Now, maybe by week 4, if Morgan is just grossly outperforming Rasheed Walker, or vice versa, maybe you scale that down and it's just whoever is the better one. But I do wonder, and we've seen it before, obviously, with Rasheed Walker and Yash Nyman doing that rotation at left tackle previously. That'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. The other one I mentioned, that number 3 quarterback, this probably doesn't affect the 53-man roster in any way. I think we're all expecting it's just going to be Jordan Love and Malik Willis at quarterback. But if you had to keep only one on the practice squad, how are you kind of attacking that third quarterback position?
Yeah, this is an interesting discussion because last year the Packers had a similar discussion with Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt, but the circumstances were different because Malik Willis was just coming in. The Packers possibly needed someone to play right away if Willis wouldn't be ready. So they kept Clifford over Pratt because they expected Clifford to be ready to play at that point. I think this year it'll be a little bit different because they know Malik Willis is the backup quarterback. If they need him to play, it's okay. So I think they'll keep Elgersma because he has a higher ceiling. He's more of a developmental player. We can see he's still adapting to American football, coming from a Canadian background. But I think at the same time, it's important for the Packers to think about next year because Malik Willis is in the final year of his deal. So I think the Packers will keep Elgersma and try to develop him And if he doesn't, then you have to anyway find a backup option next year. But LaFleur said that last week, the objective, the goal for quarterback 3 is to develop him into someone that maybe can eventually play. Not saying that Clifford can't, but I think we have more evidence so far that Elgersma, because of his arm talent, because of his frame physically, I think he has a higher ceiling. So I think the Packers must keep him on the practice squad. It's unrealistic to keep both. And I think if they need eventually Clifford to be back, I think he'll be available at the same time. So I think it's safer to keep the Canadian guy and see how he develops.
I think if you are in year 3 as a drafted quarterback and you're not easily beating out a Canadian quarterback who has never played this style of football before, you have your answer on that third quarterback. Like if you're in year 3 and you haven't seen signs of it, and this isn't just a very clear and obvious, oh yeah, it's just Sean Clifford, then you go with the younger guy who has the upside, and you sort of start that cycle over, and you give Elgersma a year or two to see if he can develop, because I think you already know what Sean Clifford is and what he isn't. And Elgersma, there's still enough of a question mark of like, oh, could you mold him into something with the arm and the talent that he has? So, and at that point, if you get to the third quarterback, you're signing somebody at that point anyway, before you're starting either of those two in an ideal situation. And if you do need to start either, it's not going to go great either way. So you might as well just take the guy with more upside and just develop him.
Yeah, and the Packers, when they drafted Clifford 2 years ago in the 5th round, their project was to have something like trying to replicate what the 49ers did with Brock Purdy. Let's draft an older prospect who's ready to play right now if needed, because they needed a backup. They didn't have money to invest in a backup quarterback, so they took Clifford. Probably they reached in the draft to get him. So he's an older prospect coming into year 3, so they kind of know who they are, and it's his ceiling. The project of Clifford was that he was coming ready to the NFL, so he is what he is at this point. And I think if the Packers are moving forward, they need someone with probably a higher ceiling and a bigger room for development. I think Elgersma is that guy.
I could easily see a situation where maybe the third quarterback is not on this roster too, and if they like somebody in cut down time or waivers, that maybe they take a chance, not signing off of waivers, but just taking them and maybe signing them to a practice squad off of another team as well. But we'll have to see, obviously, how that plays out. You had an interesting topic that I saw you kind of pose out there. Could the Packers trade a wide receiver to the Minnesota Vikings? So you usually do not see teams with it's coming actually a little bit more common where you'll see players traded within the division. TJ Hawkinson, a great example of that, going from Detroit to Minnesota. So it's not totally taboo like it once was, but walk me through this idea that Green Bay could maybe trade a wide receiver to the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, the Packers will probably keep 6 wide receivers on the 53-man roster, and I've heard something on social media that maybe the Chiefs would be interested in Mecole Hardman, because obviously he has a great connection there. But at the same time, the Vikings are looking for a wide receiver, and I think for the Packers, it would be better to keep at this point Malik Heath over Mecole Hardman. And because he's just a better wide receiver, he doesn't offer as much on special teams, but I think the Packers have enough special teamers on the roster, so the Rich Bisaccia quota is already completed. So I proposed for our Vikings beat writer at AZ Sports, Tyler Fornes, a trade for something like Mecole Hardman for a 7th rounder or something like that, because I think he would offer the Vikings some slot play, some special teams ability. They need depth, especially while Jordan Addison is suspended. And for the Packers, it would be a free pick. I know intra-divisional trades are hard, as you mentioned, but at the same time, Kwesi and Gutekunst have already made some trades. They made the Christian Watson trade. The Packers traded up with the Vikings to get Christian Watson. And Kwesi is a pretty smart guy, and he doesn't care about the old stuff much. So I think they would be fine doing trades together. And it would be good for the Packers. It's a guy they would probably cut anyway. So getting some draft capital back is smart, and the NFL has been super active over the past few days with trades. Gutekunst likes to do these trades ahead of cut down day, so I think that one's. I don't know if Mecole Hardman is exactly the guy, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers are able to pull something off in that regard.
They have done this in a pretty significant way of being able to trade players that I didn't think they were going to have any trade value for.
Cole Van
Lannon, Trevor Davis, Kadar Hallman, Jordan McRae, Reggie Gilbert. all 5 of those players, Goody was able to take as what probably would have been cut down players that they were going to release anyway and turn those into draft picks. And not even just like conditional 7th round picks. Like I think the case of Trevor Davis was like a 6th round pick.
Yeah.
So like they have been able to turn a lot of these players into draft picks. If Goody can do a little bit of that magic again and pick up a couple extra picks by trading a couple of these guys, I don't care if it's Minnesota.
Yeah,
it's not a huge thing to me.
Sorry, and it's curious because the idea that Brian Gutekunst, I think the best part about his strategy in terms of draft is the ability to accumulate picks. And the Packers have had years with 4 7th rounders, and they've got some real players in the 7th round. Rashid Walker, Carrington Valentine. So it's important to have as many shots as possible in the draft because you can find these guys. And I know it's hard sometimes with this undrafted free agent market. Teams are guaranteeing a lot of money to these players. So you can have extra 7th rounders. You can get this type of players, and it's a standard contract, drafted contract with 4 years on the deal. So I think it's important for the team and for the roster management to have those players available and those picks available to get those players.
I think so too. And I have one more for you because I think this is an interesting one as well. As we're being joined by Wendell Fajeda. You can find him on social media at WendellFP, A to Z Sports, covering the Packers every single day. You and I both had a similar idea. We're not talking even about trades maybe here at the 2025 deadline. We're talking about trades on the 2026 deadline. Last year, Malik Willis was such a huge trade at the deadline for Green Bay. They traded a 7th round pick for Malik Willis. Yesterday, we learned, or usually yesterday or day before, that Daniel Jones is going to be the starting quarterback in Indianapolis. It has not exactly gone well in the Anthony Richardson era. I think you and I both had the same thought. Could Anthony Richardson next year be the same sort of situation that Malik Willis was last year? Green Bay could need a backup quarterback. And hey, having a big, physical, mobile quarterback as your backup that has some skills and that you can kind of create an offensive around worked for Malik Willis. I could easily see that working with Anthony Richardson if that were to come to pass as well.
Yeah, don't let Sean McVay do that for the Rams. Do that yourself. I think the Packers have a positive track record. And if you see the type of quarterback that Brian Gutekunst tends to like, Anthony Richardson fits that pretty well. He traded for Deshaun Kaiser. He scouted Drew Lock. He drafted Jordan Love. He traded for Malik Willis, all big-armed guys. So Anthony Richardson, I think, fits that mold too. The Packers and the Colts, this is fun because even though the Packers have had better results, the draft process is kind of similar between Gutekunst and Ballard. They all draft athletic guys, big guys, physical guys. And I think if the Colts tend to like a player, I keep an eye on that because I think it's possible that the Packers will like him too. And I was talking to Destin Adams, who covers the Colts for us. He told me that he doesn't think that the Colts will want to trade Richardson at this point. They want him to be the backup, maybe a developmental player still. But at the same time, I think Richardson himself will want to get traded at some point because he doesn't have a shot there. That's the reality. It's the second time he's been benched in, I think, 6-7 months. So, the Colts will probably have to move on at some point. And I think for the Packers, it's perfect. Malik Willis is entering, as we've mentioned, the final year of his deal. And Richardson is under contract through 2026 and with a 5th-year option still. The Packers would probably not pick that up, but still, it's an option. And the Packers probably need that type of player. I've mentioned that Trey Lance is a guy that I would like to for the Packers. He's on a 1-year deal with the Chargers. That's the type of player that the Packers can develop. Matt LaFleur has the track record of doing that. So I think, the Packers would benefit a lot of maybe sending a day 3 pick to the Colts for Anthony Richardson. He's been bad. I know that a lot of people have pushed back on that idea because he's been bad for the Colts. But guys, he's been better with the Colts than Malik Willis was with the Titans. So I would bet on development and see how he can do. And it's a day 3 pick. If it doesn't work out, whatever, you move on. You move on and try another shot.
I'm right there with you. I think it would make all the sense in the world. We'll see if Goody can pull it off maybe in 2026. Don't expect it in 2025, but maybe next year could make a lot of sense. All right, Wendell, tell us all about your work at A to Z Sports and anything else you want to plug on the way out.
Oh, that's awesome. Today I wrote a piece about Michael Parsons, and what a trade package could look like. And I think that's a big one for the Packers fans. They are all excited about that possibility. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if it's going to happen, it'll be expensive. So I try to project based on history what that cost would look like. It's all there on A to Z Sports. And if you can follow me on Twitter also, it's Wendell FP. As always, Andy, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Likewise, appreciate you a ton. We had the same wavelength today. The podcast today over on Pack-A-Day was what are the realistic possibilities for Hendrickson, even a Jadeveon Clowney or Micah Parsons, and how Green Bay could acquire those. So very much on the same lockstep. If you want to get that full coverage, go to A to Z Sports with Wendell, and then check out the podcast after as well. And you should be covered for all of your Trey Hendrickson and Micah Parsons trade needs with those two. Wendell, I cannot thank you enough. You enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll do this again very soon.
Appreciate you, my friend.
Right back at you. That is Wendell Fajeta. You can find him again on social media at Wendell FP. Huge thank you to him for joining us on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call, that's all. This is the Pack-A-Day Radio Show. We got more for you right after this.
I mean, if you ask me, it's no way that this guy shouldn't be, 32 teams starting somewhere. I mean, that's just my opinion, the way that I see him on a day-to-day basis, his attributes, the way he uses his mind and things like that. He's a really good football player. So like I said, we had the ultimate confidence in him. I think he's going to do good. I'm not really too much worried about him.
Welcome back to the Pack a Day radio show. That was Josh Jacobs talking about Malik Willis and his potential to be a starting quarterback and the faith that they have in him in Green Bay. That was courtesy of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel as well. A huge thank you to Wendell Fajeda for joining us this past segment. Again, find him on social media at Wendell FP. Also, the Mason Crosby Show with Mitch Nellis, except not with Mitch Nellis today, is coming up from 9 to 11. We have got Sparky and Tommy covering the show today. Also, important PSA, Pack a Day Radio Show is now a podcast as well. You can find us anytime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite pods. Catch the full episode, listen by individual hour, jump straight to the highlights. Just open up your favorite podcast app or YouTube, search Pack a Day Radio Show, and hit the follow button so you can get every minute of the show your way and on your time. I had a couple people chime in on social media and on YouTube. Appreciate that a ton. We already talked about Michael's question, but Brett basically said, as we were talking through our 53, Brett Roll said Welch is a more complete player than he's obviously talking about Isaiah Simmons. He said it's very Eric Wilson-like, and I think that's a fair comparison, Brett, of what Christian Welch can bring to the team. I think Wilson's a little bit better of an actual linebacker, but I think Welch actually is probably a little bit better as a special teams player, but very similar type of role and capabilities for both of those guys. So totally agree with you there, Brett. Tommy, we've got a leadoff show coming up today. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, today at noon, got to find a way. It feels like we're inching closer to must-win territory for the Brewers today. You got to take 2 of these games. If you're playing 5 of them, you lose a game. Doesn't feel like it's the end of the world there. I'm not nervous at all for it. I'm not concerned about what's happened over the last 3 days, but it feels like today, especially more than any of the other games now, the mindset needs to be win today.
You just don't want to give them that much hope.
Right.
You know, you don't want to like let them go off on a 4-game win streak. You end on a 4-game losing streak, plus it being the Cubs in the division. It feels like it opens up a different can of worms for the remainder of the season. Whereas like getting that win, like picking up 4 games is so much different than, or I should say 3 games. Picking up 3 games feels so much different than picking, and it feels like 4 games because they won 4 in a row.
Right.
Then it does, just picking up 1 game overall. Like after all of that, after the Cubs did everything in their power to win 3 in a row and felt so excited in the totality of the series, you picked up 1 game on a team that had an 8-game lead from you. Congratulations, kudos. But if the Cubs do win this one, it does feel like buckle in, you've got a challenge through the rest of the way. And not only did they get closer to you, you actually gave them momentum for the remainder of the season as well, which is not what you want to do. So shut that down right now. Again, I don't think a loss today for the Brewers is anything to be concerned about. Like you said, they're going to be totally fine. They're a really good team, and this is not going to define them in any way, shape, or form, but it certainly could make their life a whole heck of a lot easier if they pick up this win today.
Yeah, absolutely. Leadoff show noon today for the finale of Brewers Cubs, wrapping things up before we get to being on the road starting tomorrow, Andy, for all home games. Kelly's Bleachers tomorrow.
Love it. Where are they tomorrow?
It's Giants tomorrow, I believe, right? Yeah, so
that'll do.
That'll do.
All right, cool. We've got one last topic to discuss. Let's get to our Potawatomi Sportsbook final thought of the day.
You got to do some smart thinking.
It's time for Andy Herman's final thought of the day.
What are you thinking?
Powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
What the hell were you thinking?
You're listening to the Pack a Day radio show on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, The Fan.
Joint practice today against the Seattle Seahawks preseason game, final preseason game coming up against the Seahawks on Saturday. We've already heard from Matt LaFleur. The expectation today and on Saturday is that Malik Willis is going to play a lot. We heard from Josh Jacobs either yesterday or 2 days ago. I think it was yesterday. Bears quarterback Tyson Bagent received a 2-year, $10 million deal to become, the solidified backup quarterback in Chicago. This is a deal that I have posed on a couple of different occasions for Malik Willis. And maybe Willis and his agent just say, thanks, but no thanks. We want to go to a team next year where we actually have an opportunity to compete. I think $10 million is a lot for Malik Willis to potentially turn down in that situation as well, especially in a great situation in Green Bay. And it's not like he is setting himself up long-term or like he'll still be in the prime of his career in 2 years. I think if you're Green Bay and if you could wrap him up for 2 years, $10 million, I would do the same deal for Malik Willis. Don't have to worry about that backup quarterback this year or the next year. I think that could make all the sense in the world for both sides. So I would do something similar that the Bears did there for Tyson Bagent. Again, maybe Willis and his agent just say, we're not interested in that. But if I were Green Bay, I would at least have that conversation. Either way, for Malik Willis, if you're looking for a player to watch at practice today or in the preseason game, a huge opportunity for him. This is probably, hopefully, Tommy, the last time we see Malik Willis in any sort of significant non-garbage playing time through the remainder of the season before he becomes a free agent next year. This is huge reps and huge snaps and a huge opportunity for him. We'll see if he makes the most of it. But if I'm Green Bay, I'm at least making that phone call to see if we can do something similar to what the Bears just did with Tyson Bagent at quarterback. Tommy, any final thoughts today before we get out of here?
No, but Quinn Priester pitches today as well. I didn't say that. So happy Quinn Priester Day.
All right. Pick up the win, Quinn. Who we got for the Cubs?
Showtime.
Is it? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. It's a big one. Let's get it done, Milwaukee. We need but it would be very nice to have that win today for sure. Make sure to check out that leadoff show with Tommy as well. Stay tuned for the Mason Crosby show with Tommy and Sparky coming up next from 9 to 11. Pack-A-Day podcast, 365 days a year, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. A in-depth deep dive today on Parsons, Hendrickson, Jadeveon Clowney, what Green Bay could, should, maybe can do in that situation. Break it all down today over there. Tomorrow, Jimmy Christensen here on the Pack-A-Day Radio Show. Excited about that. This has been the Pack-A-Day Radio Show today. Enjoy your Thursday, and of course, go Pack Go.